A group of 30 lucky people are set to be paid £1,600 a month with no strings attached. This is as part of the first trial of a universal basic income here in the UK. Joining me to talk about this is Charlie Mullins, the CEO of Pimlico Plumbers. Thank you, Charlie, for coming in. And Jack Kellam, who's a researcher at Autonomy, and that is the company that's running the trial. So I think we'll start with you, Jack, since you're running the trial. What is the purpose of giving people all this money every month? They don't have to work for it. It's kind of like a present, a free gift. What are you trying to establish by doing this?
So we're working with local people in North London and Jarrow, where we're planning for these trials to be held. We're really interested in finding out what the effect is of giving 30 people £1,600 a month unconditionally, to see what the effects are both on their physical and mental health, but also on other factors like employment outcomes and their financial security too. So we've seen a wave of experimentation around the world recently, in the US particularly, where there's been lots of similar experiments, but also in Europe as well, in Finland. We want to see what the effects are here in the UK, where we know already we've had a welfare system which the United Nations have called cruel and inhuman, where often people are locked into poverty and locked into poorly paid, insecure jobs by the current welfare system. So we want to see with this cohort of people, where we're planning for the trial to take place, we want to see what effect an alternate, different sort of system has on their physical and mental health and on their status in jobs and so on.
And who is funding this?
So we're still looking for funding for this pilot program. Okay. So this report sets out a plan for a pilot in the UK. Similarly, in the US, there's been private philanthropy and charities have looked to fund this because they're interested in seeing what the effects are of different forms of welfare systems. So we're looking for this in the UK. Obviously, we've already seen in Wales, there's recently been a pilot funded by the Welsh government, which has been focused on young people leaving care. So we'll be really interested to find out what results are there on that cohort. But for this pilot, we're looking to have a much broader range of people and different demographics involved, so we get a broader cross-section of society.
OK, listen to see what Charlie says in response, and then I'll come straight back to you. Charlie, £1,600 a month as an experiment to see what that does for people's mental health and physical health and financial security and prospects and all of that. I mean, it sounds like a dream, doesn't it?
Well, I think it's Disneyland. I think it's they're living in these people who come up with these research things or think tanks. They're not living in the real world. They're not living in the world where people go to work. If you're taking money out of the pot and giving them this £1,600 a month, and if they ever roll it out, it's going to cost absolutely billions. But they're discouraging people to go to work. We already have an issue with the working from home people, but all of a sudden you're going to be paying people, I think it's more than the minimum wage, which is about £22,000 a year, £24,000 to sit at home, do nothing. And these people don't need the money. They're not saying they're down on their uppers or anything. I mean, it's a crazy idea. The problem with these people is they've got all the degrees in mathematics, but they can't do basic maths. If you're giving money out of a pot, someone's got to put it back in. The only people that can put it back in are the working class people paying tax, which means we've got to pay more. Unemployment will go up. There'll be so many businesses closed down. I've got to be honest with you. I don't know if it was a joke or a wind-up, or are these people for real?
OK, well, let me ask them. Are you for real, Jack? Are you for real?
We're definitely for real.
OK, all right. Well, then what is the point of this? Because, I mean, you know, lots of people watching this and listening to this programme now will think you get given £1,600 a month so that you and other people can see what effect this has on you. What effect is it going to have on you? It's going to be excellent. You've got £1,600 a month you haven't had to earn or worry about. How can that not be excellent for your mental health? How can it not be absolutely delightful? You can have all the sweets and comics you could possibly desire. Who wouldn't want that? OK, we find that out. And then what? You can't roll it out on a bigger scale. It's much too expensive. As Charlie says, who could possibly fund it?
Well, there's plenty of different levels you might set this universal basic income at if you rolled out at a national scale. So we're interested in a pilot scheme of paying a much more ambitious payment level, but there's been lots of modelling of cost-neutral forms of basic income, which are set at a lower level. So the think tank Compass have recently put out a report which shows that you could drastically reduce poverty, even paying us less significant basic income than this. There are lots of different ways of funding this which people are putting forward. We're focused here in this one on the small scale. We want to see the effects at a small scale in these local areas. What's really interesting is we've seen, I mean, in terms of employment, what we've seen from the evidence so far, whether that's in the US, in Finland and beyond, is giving people a basic income is actually gives them a much surer footing into employment. The current system doesn't work. it's not fit for purpose.
Well, let me run
it
that by
doesn't help
Charlie.
people into work.
So the suggestion
it keeps
is
people
that
locked in poverty.
Jack, thank you.
Hold on.
If you've got £1,600 coming in that you haven't had to work for, this is a much more secure footing to get you into work. Does that make sense to you?
Well, it makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, you're discouraging people to go to work. I mean, we're struggling already to get people into the workplace. Why would you encourage people not to go to work? And you know, it's going to be an unfair system. You're going to divide in working people. Let's be honest, if you give this money out to people, they're Poncis. They're poncing off the country, they're poncing off hard-working people. And I've got to be honest, people like Jack, honestly, you need to change your job, mate, because what you're creating... No, you're laughing your head off, but what you're creating a big issue out there. How are people that are on minimum wage going to feel about the fact that you're giving someone more money and they're not to go to work? I mean, come on, fella. I mean,
we've seen over recent years that we're really subject to more and more crises in the economy. We've had COVID, we have a financial crisis before that, it's a cost of living crisis at the moment too. We know that going forward, we're going to be subject to more and more of these. The climate crisis on the horizon, right? People are going to be subject to unemployment. People are in much more insecure work than they were previously. Many people know that they might find unemployment around the corner. We need a welfare system which can factor this in, which provides people with the security and the dignity to be able to ensure...
Honestly, fella, you're talking rubbish. I have to say it. I'm just saying, I'm going to be frank with you. You are talking rubbish. It's people like you that are ruining the economy by giving people money for nothing. It's just not done. You're not in the real world. The country's in a state. People want jobs, and they're not going to go and work if you're giving them money to sit at home. I mean, common sense has got to come into it.
The country definitely is in a state.
Common sense has got to come into it. You're not even giving it...
We've been told by the United Nations that our
I'm not interested in the United Nations. I'm talking about we're over here. It's already been tried in Finland and various other countries. Of course it doesn't work. How's their mental health going to be? They're going to be laughing all the way. I mean, you're laughing because I think, I'm not going to use it, but I think you're taking the mick. Honestly, I think you're having a
I do think one of the worrying parts, Jack, about this whole conversation is when I said to you, and how are you funding it? And you said, we're still looking for funding. Yep. The other thing I think that's worrying about it is it's only 30 people. Half of them are up north. Half of them are in East Finchley in northwest London, which is a very expensive place to live. So it won't be comparable. It'll be in Jarrow, it'll be cheaper to survive on the money or indeed have a great life on the money than it will be in North London. It's such a tiny sample, Jack. Such a tiny sample that in that sample, empirically, there are going to be some people who flourish because some people flourish, some people who gamble all the money away, some people who suddenly develop alcoholism because they can afford to drink as much as they want on the money. It's going to be very hard, isn't it, to conclude anything from that tiny sample of 30 people divided in half in Jarrow, half in northwest London, with this gift of £1,600 a month. I wonder whether there's any point in it.
So first of all, I would say that Finchley has actually a much more diverse set of economic backgrounds in there than often people might think of for North London. However, I would say, yeah, of course, 30 is less people we'd like to be testing out on a more major scale. But to be realistic for sets of the amount of funding we think is going to be possible for something like this. However, you still get some really powerful personal stories, right, in terms of how this is going to impact on people. If we see this as a starting point, in the US, there's been similar small-scale pilots, and this has led to a knock-on effect as pilots were spread around the country. So you have to start somewhere, right, with policies like this.
This is also going to go on for 2 years, Jack, isn't it? For 2 years, you're going to give all this money away to people across the country. And rightly, as Vanessa says, it doesn't prove anything. What would prove something is get them a job, make sure they go to work and contribute something. That's what will prove something, because that will encourage other people.
I have to conclude it there. Unfortunately, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I hope the viewers and listeners are too. Thank you very much, Jack.
Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie. Good to see you. So what do you think of that scheme? £1,600 a month. Is it fair?